epic. That's how I would describe Twilight Princess in a nutshell. It's one of those games where you can feel it seeping from every fiber of its being. From the box art, to the visual style, all the way to the music and dialogue. After Ocarina and Majora, this game was undoubtedly what people felt Zelda was leading up to. And to think it was only created because at the time, Wind Waker, a now beloved Zelda game, was considered a disappointment and a flop. So did this course correction pay off for Nintendo? Well, Twilight Princess was the best-selling Zelda game before Breath of the Wild, so I'd say so. Today I want to take a quick dive into what makes Twilight Princess so unique, what makes it tick, and why it's still so revered as a great Zelda game, despite how a vocal part of the fanbase turned on it over the years. Basically, this is what made Twilight Princess so good. Twilight Princess is a game that's born from Wind Waker in so many ways, from its very inception as a sequel to Wind Waker, to pivoting that sequel to be more of its own thing due to the reception to Wind Waker at the time. It's no surprise that several of Wind Waker's advancements would make their way into the games that follow it. Most notably, the way the game's story is told has evolved naturally since the early Zelda days. It's no longer just a mute hero saving the world on a Sunday morning. Wind Waker's intro was instead laser focused on giving the hero a proper, personal call to action, and focused a lot on his reasons for doing so. This personable hero approach, one who shows more emotion and is far more involved with the actual narrative of the game, would continue on and evolve in Twilight Princess, becoming one of its biggest strengths and one of its biggest weaknesses in the process, taking what they knew worked in Wind Waker and working to adjust what they knew people disliked. The other biggest lesson learned from Wind Waker was that sometimes you just gotta swallow your pride and listen to your fans sometimes. By course correcting to the expectations set by the overall player base, Twilight Princess became what it was and what it still is, a beloved Zelda game selling incredibly well. They still adhere to this lesson today. Whenever a game is heavily disliked on release, the next major game is probably a complete flip of what people didn't like about it. From Wind Waker to Twilight Princess and from Skyward Sword to Breath of the Wild, two sets of games that completely flipped their preceding game on its head in order to create something that the fanbase was actually clamoring for. With a new Zelda game in a new setting, we usually get a new iteration of Link, and this game, like the game that precedes it, is no exception. What many people don't realize though is that the Link we got in Twilight Princess is a direct parallel to the Link we got in Wind Waker in extremely subtle ways, and it's used to great effect in characterizing our new Link without resorting to him speaking. Let me explain. Wind Waker Link isn't necessarily a destined child raised by a knight or even a tree to one day unfold their grand destiny. He wasn't different from the other kids or anything. Honestly, he's had a pretty great life. He's just a kid who lives with his grandma, plays with his sister, and sleeps in a watchtower because that's what he likes to do. Life's not so tough on the children of Outset Island, and it's apparent that it's only after they become adults that they really start to provide for themselves and for the island. Evidenced by all the other adults often doing some kind of work, and all the fishing boats strewn about. They're living a humble islander life, and the kids of the island only become involved when they grow up. In Ordon Village, a little place right outside Hyrule, this is about the same. The key difference is that this time we don't see it from the perspective of a child, but a young adult. This is our new Link. He has a job helping at the ranch, he likes horse riding, and his fascination with swordsmanship has him training under Russell, who is effectively the town guard. What's important is that the children of Ordon Village directly mirror those of Outset Island, but your relationship with them is different now, because you're on the receiving end of the children's antics. Instead of being the kid who trains with the grown-up, you're the grown-up who, somewhat reluctantly, trains the kids in your ways. Tallow really wants to try out a sword. Beth wants to see you be a cool man. Mallow is a creepy abomination that I'm not going to spend any time on. And Colin looks up to you because his dad, Russell, always talks about you in such a positive light. And it's implied that Link often gives him the time of day when he needs someone to talk to. Twilight Princess's Link is overall showcased as a good guy who always has time to help the citizens of Ordon. He's mature, provides his own food and such, he doesn't seem to have any parents, but takes care of himself just fine. He actually chooses to live on the outskirts of the village when any number of citizens would probably be fine with taking him in if he's actually needed it. He's independent and well off for Ordon Village life, really. There are some things that make this Link special compared to the other villagers. He's the only one with at least some Hylian blood, evidenced by being the only one with pointed ears, and he's got a Triforce mark on his hand. though it doesn't appear that anyone ever told him what significance it has. For all intents and purposes, he grew up a normal child into a proper young adult with a special interest in swordplay. It's through this lens that we see this world and its inhabitants. There's not a single humanoid who talks down to you in this game. I mean, aside from Midna. You're never a child that needs to be talked to on their level. You're always treated like an adult. Some may reminisce about your younger years, but overall, you command a certain respect in this game, unlike so many other Zelda games. And I don't think it's unfair to say that this changes everything in how you, as the player, interact with this world. While a young adult Link who, quite frankly, has his life together pretty well and is a certified good boy, does not leave a lot of room for character growth on his part, this isn't a weakness to Twilight Princess in the slightest. Where Ocarina of Time and even Wind Waker emphasized the growth of Link as a hero, Twilight Princess's Link was basically born his heroic self, and the game capitalizes on this to grow so many other characters in his stead, and I love it! I've already talked about the Auron kids for a bit, but early on they all get kidnapped, including Ilia, the childhood friend character who was always there with Link as they grew up. Ilia would go on to lose her memory, but in her good nature, she'd always step up for what's right despite not even knowing who she is. While I do think Ilia is one of the weaker characters in the game, she is one of many central pieces that make the Auron village kids a symbol of courage, as each of them exhibit a different kind of it. Ilia is one such example. She's naturally inclined to heal others, and will stop at nothing to do so. Mallow isn't quite a main focus. He recognizes he doesn't have the courage to become a hero. He's far more reserved than the other kids and just doesn't have it in him to stand in harm's way and put himself out there. Except he does do that in a more subtle, almost sinister way. With the owner of the Kakariko shop no longer with us, Mallow decides that someone needs to man it, and that person can be him. He becomes a shrewd businessman almost overnight, and he uses this to help the people of Hyrule instead, being a leader in financing the restoration of a bridge and making the Hyrule Castle Town a better place by providing lower prices than its competition. It's honestly absolutely horrifying that this child was capable of doing so much at a young age, yet it makes him a hero in an inherently sinister, unpronounced way. Someone who supported history being made for this iteration of Hyrule, while probably not appearing on any record whatsoever. Then there's his brother Tallow. Like Mallow, Tallow embodies a more selfish courage. He's headstrong, rushes into danger, and makes plenty of mistakes along the way. The first time Link sees real combat in this game entirely has to do with him cleaning up Tallow's mistakes. He's also quite a bully to Colin, which makes him more reclusive and meek than he already was. While he already respects Link at the start of the game, it's when he's first rescued by Link that his respect for Link jumps tenfold, and he starts to become more introspective about his actions. And while taking shelter in Kakariko Village, he's among the first to believe that Link will come save them, and is absolutely ecstatic when he arrives. After an incident with Colin, Tallow ends up growing out of his immaturity and starts helping as the Town Watch, allowing his eagerness to throw himself to the front lines to become the very thing that protects the others. When he returns to Auron Village, he will most likely become the Town Watch when he grows up. Finally, there's the budding hero Colin. Colin is my precious baby, and absolutely one of my favorite characters in this game. He's this young, bullied and timid boy who very clearly looks up to Link. He actively wants to spend more time with him, so he makes Link a fishing rod so they have something they can do together. Link makes time to sit down and talk with him as well. They have an almost brother-like bond. Throughout his life, Colin has been raised with stories of Link's strength, making him almost a living legend in his eyes, and he continuously wants to be more like him. But he doesn't believe in himself that he has the strength to do so. However, after the kidnapping, he's the first to exclaim Link will come save them to cheer up Beth, to which Tallow fears up as well in full belief that he's right. The strength to stay resolved in the face of adversity, as small as it may be, is the first step Colin shows to realizing his true potential, although he doesn't quite know it yet. It's not too long after that King Boblin, the one who originally kidnapped them in the first place, returns to ravage Kakariko Village, and as the only one finding himself able to move, Colin saves Beth with a steeled resolve in his eyes, suddenly finding himself the hero, though injuring himself and getting kidnapped once more along the way. It's in this moment that Colin learns what it is to be a true hero, and it's heavily implied at the game's conclusion that he's learning swordplay from Russell as his newest student, following in Link's footsteps to become a true hero. Twilight Princess may not have as big a world as Breath of the Wild, or even one as densely packed as something like Link Between Worlds, but what it lacks in actual size and density, it takes back in sheer impact. At the time, this game was the most cutscene-heavy Zelda game yet, and in tandem the most linear one. It was set on making an epic story rather than a world to explore. And while this is one thing that tends to rub people the wrong way, including myself, I cannot deny in replaying and rewatching the cutscenes of the game for this video, I got goosebumps, man. Just from the top of my head, there's the King Boblin jousting match, the bridge being set on fire which forces you to jump down into Lake Hylia, flying with a Twilight Bird, the hidden village, the snowboarding section, and there's just so much more. It feels like every connecting point between story points houses at least one seriously good action set piece that holds the game together. Lots of it accompanied with unique background music to that particular part of the game. This is the game that brought us this particular shot of Link, one of the single most iconic moments in the entire Zelda franchise. There is something about the way this Link is portrayed in these moments that make me feel all the closer to this world. Something that admittedly even my favorite Zelda games, the Nintendo 64 ones, fail to capture. He's so emotional. He smiles, he's angry, the freaking pose and over-the-top sheathing of the sword. As I said at the beginning of the video, there's only one way I can really describe this game. It's epic. Simple as that. With the immense amount of new fans Zelda has garnered since the release of Breath of the Wild, I don't want to go into too much detail to avoid spoiling newcomers to the series. If you know, you know, and if you don't, I hope this piqued their interest for you to go check it out. You know, go ahead. I'm not judging. These are just a few things that make Zelda Twilight Princess an absolutely great game at its core. It's incredibly well crafted, and the things it does well, it does extremely well as we'd come to expect from the Zelda series at the time, and that's still the case. And yet for me, it's also one of my least favorites, as it's the one I consistently have problems with. I think how you feel about this game has a lot to do with what you value the most in Zelda, and I think this game simply makes a few too many missteps and has quite a bit of missed potential here and there, like Zand. That being said, if it wasn't abundantly clear, I don't hate it. I still really like it, and I genuinely do have a lot of respect for it. If Nintendo suddenly came out with a new Twilight Princess-like game, or even just a remaster, I'd probably still be all over that. It's just that good. Also, Link and Midna are hot.